We are a few days away from the new Christmas special of Doctor Who, and so I thought I would do a video about kind of what I expect from the new episodes. This is the second video that I've done on Doctor Who. My first one that I did was in like 2013, I think, where I made some pretty bold claims.
Doctor Who is better than other TV shows that exist, and pretty much all of the episodes are good.
That's not true, is it? Neither of those things are true. And I also told some actual lies.
One of the first episodes of Doctor Who I ever watched was Robot, which was a Tom Baker story, and I instantly loved that episode, and so I thought, I wish there was more of it. My dad said, there is. There's loads of classic episodes, and so I watched some more of them. In 2006, when I was 10, Doctor Who, and I was like, yes!
While it's true that I did watch classic episodes around that sort of time, when the show was revived in 2006, I had never heard of it, but my dad, who had been a fan of the classic episodes, was like, hey, this is a thing you might enjoy, and he got me into the show, and then after I was already a fan, he showed me some classic episodes, so I don't know why I felt the need to change the story and to lie, but I did. But I made that video when I was like deep in my Doctor Who obsession. Like, I was really into it. That was pretty much the only franchise I ever invested myself in and was ever a proper hardcore fanboy of. And since then I've realised that it was pretty bad. When I made that video, Stephen Moffat had been showrunner for like 3 years. I have a lot of problems with him as a writer and a showrunner. I'm not going to go into all of them, except a couple that are specifically to do with the new episodes. I'm not really going to go into all my reasons why I think he's bad. You can find so much content online already about how he's not very good. But yeah, I very much was viewing it through rose-tinted glasses as someone who was already a fan, and since then I've become very much disillusioned with the show. One of the things that I think he did really poorly was representation of women and LGBT people especially. He also didn't do great representation for people of colour, but I feel like his worst areas were women and people who are LGBT. They didn't get very much representation at all, and when they did, it wasn't very good. Like, it wasn't just poorly written. A lot of the times they were not interesting characters, they were uncompelling, they were uninteresting, and I think this is a problem that he doesn't just have with Doctor Who. He also did this with Sherlock, as well as his tendency to queerbait everything he's ever written. But yeah, the two demographics that he disserviced the most, I feel, were women and LGBT people. He did make a move towards being a bit better with the most recent series, where he had a gay woman of colour as the main companion in the series, but it didn't feel like he was doing that because he had taken advice on board and gone like, oh, yeah, you're right, I should do that. It seemed more like he was going, fine, you keep asking for it, so fuck it, here you go. That's what it seemed like. It seemed like he was doing it out of obligation rather than because it was something that he thought was important. And that brings me onto the new Doctor, who's going to be introduced in the Christmas episode. A big point of contention is that the new Doctor is going to be a bisexual woman. Lots of people have had problems with this, which you can find all over the internet, and a lot of people have already debunked most of their arguments. Well, not debunked their arguments, but made counter arguments, and you can also find those pretty much everywhere. I'm not really going to go into them. But one of the big arguments is that Chris Chibnall, who is taking over the show, is kind of pandering to liberals and pushing an agenda. And I feel like that's not entirely wrong, but I also don't think there's a problem with it. And I think it's because he's making a very specific effort to fix the writing, fix the show, for the people who were disillusioned by Stephen Moffat's run. There was a huge drop in the number of people watching the show while Stephen Moffat was the showrunner. And as someone who knows a lot of women and knows a lot of LGBT people, most of the people who used to be fans and then stopped being fans were women and LGBT people, specifically LGBT women. And a lot of them got back into the show when Bill, the gay woman, was the companion. And they seemed to like that because they were being represented on screen, but even then, they did admit that the writing was still quite bad, and that the representation wasn't necessarily good representation, because Stephen Moffat doesn't know how to write women or LGBT people or LGBT women. So a huge number of LGBT people and women kind of stopped watching the show, and it feels, with this introduction of Jodie Whittaker as a bisexual female doctor, it feels like Chris Chibnall is saying, look, I know you were done dirty with the last 5 years of the show, 6 years, I don't know. I know you were done dirty, but don't worry, I'm gonna be making more of an effort than Stephen Moffat did to be inclusive and representative and write women and LGBT women as actual fleshed out and interesting characters. Not only that, but if you did feel that you were done dirty by the last 5 or 6 years of the show, then have the main character. You felt like you were hard done by the last half a decade of the show, don't worry, you're going to be represented by the titular character. You're good, I got you. Which I think is a good thing. I feel like it's definitely going to bring more of a viewership back to the show. I feel like it's going to introduce a lot of new people to the show. I think a lot more people are going to take an interest in it now. But it seems like a lot of Doctor Who purists and traditional fans of the show are planning on never watching it again, are planning on leaving the fandom, and that confuses me a great deal, because it also seems like, as well as catering his new run of the show towards present fans of the show and potential new fans of the show, and although it seems like he's gearing it towards, a modern audience, it also seems like he's doing a lot to cater to fans of the original run, fans of the classic episodes. Which brings me on to my predictions, I guess, for where I think the show might or could go. And ultimately my conclusion in that regard is that I think that it's going to be more similar to the classic episodes. For one, if you look at the promotional images for Jodie Whittaker in costume as the Doctor, her costume is very much closer to like Peter Davison kind of Colin Baker style outfits rather than the more recent ones. And also, if you notice, in the background of the promotional image is her TARDIS, and it looks a lot more like the classic designs than it does the newer, more modern ones. If you look at the little sign on the front of it, the first Doctor's TARDIS, I think, was a white background with black text, and all of the new ones, from Christopher Eccleston all the way up to Peter Capaldi, have also had that. They've had a white background with black text. But all of the Doctors, from the second Doctor to the 8th Doctor, I'm pretty sure all of them had a dark background with white text on it. And that's what the new one has. Also, it was announced that this series isn't going to have 13 episodes in it, like most of them do. It's going to only have 12. And in the original classic series, most of the series would be serialized. It would be broken up into chunks of 4, well, sometimes 6 or 7 episodes, but usually 4 episodes which all shared one story. There would be a handful of groups of 4 episodes that all covered one story. And introducing a new 12 episode structure seems like he could be moving more towards doing that again, like they did in the classic episodes, rather than doing what they've been doing for the last, 11 years. Another thing is that since 2006, the Doctor has only really ever had one companion at a time. There have been moments and handfuls of episodes where they've had 2, maybe 3 companions, but they were all very brief stints. For the most part, the Doctor has had one companion that has remained throughout the series. One main companion anyway. We had Rose, then we had Martha, then we had Donna. Amy and Rory were a nice break from that structure, but still for the most part it felt like Amy was the main companion. Then Clara, and then Bill, although towards the end there was Nardole as well, but my point is that for the most part the Doctor has had one companion. Whereas in the classic episodes, the Doctor would have like a bunch of companions. The first ever series of Doctor Who, he had 3 companions. He had his granddaughter and 2 of her teachers. The general style of Doctor Who back then was that he would have like a small crew, I guess. He would have a small group of people travelling around with him, and that was standard. And now, with Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, there are going to be 3 companions, which again feels like more of a move towards the classic episodes. I guess the most telling thing for me, or the most poignant piece of quote-unquote evidence, is the episode that she's being introduced in is an episode that also features the First Doctor as a character. Peter Capaldi's Doctor is going to be spending a lot of the episode with William Hartnell's Doctor, although he is going to be played by, David Bradley now. So to have an entire episode where one of the main characters is the very first Doctor, and then introduce the new Doctor in that episode, feels like they're going to be gearing the new series a lot more towards what it was like in the classic era. So although they are being more progressive and more liberal with their casting, it seems like the structure of the show itself is going to be a lot more traditional, which is what I mean when I say that he's gearing it towards new and modern fans, but also traditional purist fans of the show. But a lot of traditional fans of the show seem to be leaving the fandom anyway. A lot of people are acting like the number of people leaving the fan base because of the new female bisexual Doctor is going to kill the show. I've seen a lot of people refer to it as like the death of Doctor Who, saying that this is the end of its run. No one's going to watch it anymore. But I would say that for every fan that leaves, the new structure and the new Doctor are going to attract an extra fan, so I feel like it will pretty much balance itself out. I by no means think that this is going to be the end of the show. But yeah, like I said, I became pretty disillusioned with Doctor Who a while ago. Even the most recent series was really disappointing, and the only ones that really stuck out to me were the final 2 episodes. So I'm not expecting great things, I just kind of hope that they do great things. Chris Chibnall could really use this as an opportunity to fix a lot of what Stephen Moffat broke about the show, and I think that's a good thing, and I really hope that he does. But if he doesn't, I don't know if I'll carry on watching it. I already stopped watching it for a while, and then only recently caught up on like the last 2 or 3 years. And the most recent episodes did kind of revamp my enthusiasm for the show a little bit. Ultimately, if it's just more of the same, if it suffers the same problems that Stephen Moffat's run of the show faced, then it will be bad, and I will not continue watching it, which would be a shame, because like I said, it used to be my favourite show, and then it became very quickly one of my least favourite shows, and now it's just kind of moderately enjoyable for me, and I think that's a shame. I just think that's a shame. I think it's quite sad that that I was so obsessed with it, and now I'm just exhausted with it, is what I am. So yeah, on Christmas, tune in to BBC One, I guess, and watch Doctor Who if you want, and watch Wonder Woman.